Kim,
Hey,
we're doing this in person.
We are.
Finally.
So excited.
Oh, me too. I'm super grateful you're able to make time on this Sunday with your kids and your practice, that you're able to carve out some time for me and the show, and I'm really grateful for that. I've had, kind of the reason why we're here is I've had multiple people, whether after the show or during like their show, bring up you, right? Whether it be in the form of like, oh man, like she does all these crazy cool things, really smart woman, like all these cool people that I think are really interesting and fascinating are saying that about you. I'm saying
neat.
what I think about them, but about you. And so now we're here.
Now we're here.
Right on. So take me through we'll start kind of your journey, like post-secondary, take us from there to how we ended up here, and we'll start there.
Okay, so I grew up in Elliott Lake, so I went to the high school called ELSS, and the thing I remember the most, now I'm going to date myself here, we had grade 13, so I went to OAC, and in my 5th year of high school, I remember all my friends going around going, well, I'm going to go to Queens, and I'm going to take law, and I'm going to go to U of T, and I'm going to take medicine, and I'm like, I remember in that year going, oh, that's a good idea. I'm jealous about that, you know? And everyone having these really big, glorious ideas and goals and dreams. And then I was like going, I don't know what I want to do. Yeah. And so I went to Laurentian and I took, back then it was your human kinetics still, but it was more exercise physiology. Now it's kinesiology. Yeah. And I knew that I wanted something in the healthcare field, but I had no clue what. So I spent my 4 years doing kin, and at the end of that, I still had no idea. I didn't know if I wanted medicine. I didn't know if I wanted physio or any of the rest of it. So after my 4th year, I took a year off, and I moved to Kitchener.
Oh, nice.
And I was lucky enough to work in this really neat strip mall, and half of it was a physiotherapy clinic and half of it was a sports medicine clinic.
Oh, cool.
And coming from a small city, I didn't know what sports medicine was exactly. I did have the privilege of working with Wendy Hampson at Laurentian University, and anybody that went through Laurentian would remember Wendy. She was an athletic therapist at Laurentian for, I'm going to say 40 years probably.
Oh, geez, good for her.
Yeah, and she was a mentor to many, many, many people. And so I started my time in Kitchener in the physio side. And as interesting as it was not really my, kind of like my soulmate. It was medicine and it was education, and it had that gratitude factor, and people were coming and going. But there was still something lacking in the entire environment. Yeah. And then I went to the sports medicine side. And let me tell you.
Now we're talking.
Now we're talking. So we had the women's Olympic softball team coming through. And they were strong women, and they were big women, and they were powerful women.
Amazing.
And this sports guy was just, they were hooting and hollering, and the music was playing, or the TVs were on, and someone was screaming, and I remember going, oh, what is this place? Yeah. But the interesting thing was the athletic therapist there, he knew about them. He knew what sport. And he had this really interesting way about going about their treatments according to what that was coming up. Right? So when I was on the other side, it wasn't like, okay, so you're going to drive to Toronto on Friday, so we're going to adjust your treatments according to what's happening in the week. But this guy did. So he would ask the women, or whoever was in there for that matter, the OHL team came through there as well. And it was like, so you're going to play a game, your game's on Saturdays, so, you're going to eat like this. This is how you're going to taper. This is what your workouts are going to look like. And he sat back and went, wow, there's a lot up there. If I could just take that head and do this. Yeah. Right? Okay. And so that was the point for me, was right then and there when I realized that the environment was loud and energetic and positive, and it was just, I found that the people healed well. There was a trust, but there was a familial perspective. Yeah. And everybody knew him by name, and it was just a really good environment to expect and to evoke the healing process. So right after that, I applied to Sheridan in Oakville, and I got in and spent 3 great years with a great group of of people, and they're all over the place. I've got one with the National Ballet,
Oh, wow.
all the way through to the NHL. So my
That's
my classmates were pretty talented, and I was coming back to Sudbury. So in my last year at Sheridan, I also took my acupuncture, and I also started osteopathy, which was by a physician out of France named Guy Voyer. So pretty cool stuff there. I don't practice the osteo stuff very often, but I do still steal some of the techniques.
Just to apply what you do on a day-to-day. Nice.
And just because I do things quickly, right? So the recovery piece is a little faster. And so in my last year, I would come home on Fridays, and I was getting my clinic ready. I hadn't even written my exam yet.
No?
Every Friday I'm meeting with a bank or a landlord or something, and I was prepping, and then I remember one day going, oh shit, I hope I pass.
Like, oh yeah, I gotta study for this thing.
I'm like, oh shoot, I'm opening on this day, 6 weeks before is my exam. I hope I pass.
That's
And-
close too.
oh, yeah.
6 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
Geez.
And
No time like the present though.
knock on wood, everything went well, passed, and I started my clinic on August 6, 2000.
Nice.
Yep.
It's been onwards and upwards ever
Yep.
since.
Yep.
That's so cool. Did you always know you wanted to create that environment that you really enjoyed
Yes.
as you kind of grew up? in the
No,
industry?
no, that's the interesting thing. I didn't. And this is probably more directed to people who don't know what they want to do. This comment here, there's a lot about myself that I know now
Yeah.
that I didn't know existed inside of me then. And I know that sounds a
Yeah.
little corny, but it's actually very true. I didn't
Yeah.
realize a lot about my character when I was younger. I had no idea. And as you get older and you realize how tough you are and how motivated you can be and how you can persevere and all these
Yeah.
other things, you just don't know them when you're younger, right?
Yeah.
So I've learned a lot about myself in these processes and these experiences. And so no, I actually didn't know any of that before.
Jeez, once you kind of experienced that environment, right at the clinic, you wanted to from there kind of create that. You're like, I want this for
Yes.
I want to be
Well,
that hat that people can.
Yeah, and who doesn't want to go to work where it's loud and laughter and people are high-fiving you on the way out?
It's a good energy.
It's a great energy,
Yeah.
right? And so many people have a job where they're like, oh, it's Monday. Oh, thank God, it's Friday at 5, right? And I'm the opposite.
Yeah.
One of my favorite places on earth is work. I get to go to one of my favorite places every single day and see some of the most amazing humans. So for me, my work environment is awesome.
Yeah.
So
You don't
when
say.
when I
Yeah.
first started, I didn't have TVs in the room. I introduced those probably about 10 years ago, and it just gives people something to do, and it gives us a topic to talk about. So they'll either be curling on, or the Olympics on, or an NHL
Always
team
sports?
on the guys' side.
Yeah, okay.
So
No
in my
news?
facility, instead of doing a whole bunch of curtains, I have 4 beds on one side for women, and their space is designed a little bit prettier. And then my guy's side looks like a basement, kind of like a man cave. So I've got concrete, yeah, exactly. Concrete walls. I've got hockey jerseys
Nice,
up everywhere.
yeah.
So the guy's side typically has sports, and the girl's side typically has like HGTV
Yeah.
kind of things. on it.
Nice.
But it gives us, it opens up conversations if things are going on. And, sometimes it's one of our local NHL guys that,
Yeah.
like Marcus, who did a Superman punch and missed. And so it opens up for a lot of topics, the
Yeah, I
conversation.
saw that. I was like, oh no.
Oh, yeah, I was like,
He bailed
oh,
off the ice pretty
Marcus.
hard after that.
Yeah.
Like, he just gone.
Yeah.
Like, all right.
You
He
know.
knew what it was.
Gotta love them. But yeah, so it's the environment, we're always laughing. And yeah, it just gives us, something to do, and just the environment in itself is just a really cool place to be.
Yeah.
And I think that helps people. You don't want to see me, right? You don't want to be in pain and have to
That's
call
a good point.
Kim.
That's a good point.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you're calling me, you're pretty sore.
Yeah.
And
Walking is not easy for you. No.
so if I can lighten that anxiety and that
fair.
pressure a little bit by the environment, then they're coming into a setting that they'll heal from. Right?
Interesting. It feels like, just from what I hear and what talking to you, I feel as if you're there's a very cool connection that's formed, right?
Yep.
Through you and your clients and
Yep.
you and your staff and stuff.
Yep.
Is that how you go about that? Like, it sounds like when you create the environment for the women, environment for the men, what else do you do that kind of allows that connection to form? with clients?
We joke a lot. We harass our patients quite a bit in a fun and,
of course,
safe way. But right from the time they come in and they see Aunt at the desk, she's my Italian bulldog, so she'll harass them a little bit, and we form relationships very, very quickly, and it's just a really light-hearted place, and we make sure that. And I work beside Mike.
Yeah.
So Mike's in my rooms,
yeah.
and so and we're always talking. So always talking, always teaching, always chatting.
Yeah.
So people will take some of that information, and Mike has these really neat, we call them Mikeisms, and they're these
no
little,
way.
Oh yeah,
This is a thing. Oh, I wish I knew.
It is.
Oh.
And so he tells one patient the other day, and sometimes you don't even realize someone's listening to you, right? So he's trying to stretch them, and he's like, "It's like you're like bending a Buick." So I'm like 3 beds over, and I start laughing my ass off. I'm like, that's the best comment I think I've ever heard. So I'm like, what does that mean exactly? He's like, I can't bend him. Like he's like a Buick. I've used it like 3 or 4 times with patients. So it's those kinds of kind of conversations we have. Yeah, that we have there. And the guy's laughing. He's like, okay, so I'm not flexible, right?
You can't bend a Buick.
No. So so it's just a lot of back and forth and laughter, and that's I think our personality. So everybody that works under my roof or in my facility, we have very similar values and very very similar personalities. Yeah. So it's and I think that helps people feel comfortable, and then when they feel comfortable, they feel confident about their practitioner, and when it's a light-hearted kind of environment, they're very comforted very quickly. And when you can settle somebody's sympathetic nervous system, meaning their fight or flight, or their anxiety, or their stress from the day, and you bring them in, and then they're sitting and they're like, okay, I like this place. These guys are pretty funny. Or I get to watch TV for an hour and I don't have my kids. So nobody, and when you start, they start to kind of settle into their place. Yeah. And then it's like this, and then their body's ready to recover.
That's awesome. How important is that aspect in the preparing them to go through the injury process, like the recovery process?
I think it's incredibly important. I think that medical models or therapeutic models where your treatments are quick, and yes, you may be doing something physiologically for them, but I think the before piece is just as important as that piece. So when we work on somebody, we have heat, we get them settled in. Because the other thing too is everybody's busy. Everybody. Our moms, our dads, our brothers, our sisters, everybody's busy. So when they're trying to fit in an hour treatment in their day, they're running there, they're parking, they're running in, hoping they're not late. Now we got all the COVID screens, so they got to do all that stuff, right? And then you're getting them into the bed, and if the next thing is diving right into the treatment, your expectations are going to be a little too high and thinking that they're just going to calm enough for you to go at it.
Never happens. They're up here, you got to bring them down. It's too much of a jump.
So now their sympathetic nervous system and their fight or flight is firing.
Right.
And we want to when we work, we need to work in their parasympathetic, which is their calming system. And in order to be here, I got to bring them down. Yeah. So our treatments are longer. They have 20 minutes where there's a heat pack on them. They're comfortable. They're warm. We have a machine called the interferential current. That's prepping the site. So there's a purpose for everything that we do there. Right. And the first 15, 20 minutes, yes, it's to calm them, get their nervous system settled, anxiety, whatever. Get their day finished, or at least whatever they were kind of struggling, or even just being in a rush. Think of just going to a meeting and you sit there for a minute and you're like, okay, now I'm ready, right? Getting that off the table, and then after that, then we take the next 40 minutes and we do the treatment. So I personally think it's incredibly important. If you want to create a change in that person, you need them ready to do so. So I think it's incredibly important.
Okay. That's interesting that it's not a, because I know having, and you have a chiropractor as well.
I don't. That's about the only thing I don't have. Not because I don't believe in them. I have. Dr. Cannell was with me for a few years. We just never really put another one back in. So I'm hoping to have one again.
Nice. Yeah. What I was wondering, I know they have a weird, there's a misconception people have with it. Man, I need a chiropractor to crack me a bunch. Why do you think that is there? Like, it always seems like that's something that, like, they're always separate in the recovery process. At least from what I've seen, like, they're separate doing their thing, and then there's groups of clinics.
Right. Oh, that's an interesting concept, actually. Now, chiropractors are probably one of the strongest diagnosticians in the allied paramedic world. Yeah. They are spectacular in the neuro and obviously in the spine. And as we know, that's, a cause of a lot of problems. Right. They're also doctors of chiropractics, right? So they are typically seen a little higher, we'll say, in the food chain. And they work really well with massage therapy. When you have multidisciplinary clinics are very, very hard to do well. I've been grateful with the fact that mine has run very smoothly. But that's also because I allow all my practitioners to run their own piece. I don't micromanage. So, yeah. Huge. So sometimes what happens is a chiropractor will own the facility or will be the lead practitioner, and then everybody runs out underneath them. And there's a lot of turnover in facilities that are run that way because everyone's competing for that lead role. Right. If you're in some sort of allied or paramedical profession, chances are you're a type A personality and you're a go-getter. The other thing that happens is, in the multidisciplinary facilities, a lot of times they'll be like, well, I could do this on my own and pay less rent or pay less to the owner. I don't need these people to do my work because I've already done my schooling. So a lot of times you get them broken up and people go on their way and start. And that's in dentistry, that's in optometry, that's in anything, right? Yeah, that's true. And it does. And you can, by all rights, you can. But where the connection and that multidisciplinary approach benefits is the patient. Because it's like a one-stop shop. So if I can't figure it out, I can send them to physio. If physio's like, I don't do enough manual work, but they need a really deep massage, I've got 3 RMTs, right? And so on and so forth. So their care stays within the trusted circle of care, which is in one building. So
easy.
I don't, so I, of course, not being a chiro, I don't really know where that kind of break is. But you're right, I have noticed that they typically do run facilities on their own. But I'm assuming it's probably mostly because they're just higher and better educated on diagnosing neurological issues.
Interesting. Yeah, that's why I was wondering. I was like, oh, it's separate. So
yeah.
But, okay. So this when we first started talking, like over FaceTime a couple weeks ago, kind of break the ice and stuff. We went on a long conversation about this kind of generation of athletes, right? Yeah. And so, I mean, like the athletes that we have as mutual friends or people out there even that we don't know or that I don't know maybe personally, but you do. Yeah. Seeing the things they're accomplishing at the levels they're accomplishing it at, and at first glance, they don't look like they can accomplish those things, right? They're not like Michael B. Jordan physiques or anything, right? So you're like, at first glance, you're kind of confused. Now, why is that? Like, why do you think those, like that generation of athlete is kind of starting to take a uphill?
I think there's 2 things you can attribute that to. I think it's the Spartan world, now that we have these races that combine the running and all the obstacles. And I think the David Goggins world can be thanked for that as well. For those of you who don't know, look him up. Pretty impressive man. And I think the generation is in podcasts.
Yeah.
Right? So people are learning a lot of bits of information and they don't have to read a full book.
Yeah, which is
right?
It's kind of a shame.
But sometimes it's enough to get them interested in the book. But I think those are the factors that are creating, and I don't know if you know Skylar, who just ran across Canada.
Okay. I don't know him
personally, though. He's a good one too, just so we don't call out any locals. So if you look at what Skylar accomplished, he ran, it's got to be close to 6,000 kilometers.
Far.
And he ran around 63 kilometers a day for 160 days. Ugh. So let's all think about that for a second. That's a marathon and a half every single day. Rain, shine, snow, whatever, right across Canada for mental health.
Yeah. Amazing.
Amazing.
Amazing, yeah.
So I think what's happening is people are seeing that the physical and mental limitations that they were putting on themselves were just that. They were their own belief systems.
Yeah.
And I think the David Goggins and the Spartan races and the Skylers of the world have made people realize that your physical capabilities far exceed what you think they do. And you can pull this stuff off.
Yeah.
And, you know, the harm versus the hurt. And am I hurting or is it hurt? And all those things, I think people are listening to podcasts more. They're reading a bit more, but they're reading things that are motivational. And the other thing that's come to light, obviously, is mental health.
Right.
And a lot of people are doing these physical races and sports and just goals and things like Skylar because of their own mental health.
Yeah.
And
That's true.
they're putting these really big goals and they're succeeding.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And they're showing
Amazing.
people through their battles
Yeah.
what they can accomplish to help motivate someone else battling the same thing.
Yeah.
And before, I think mental health was just, as we know, was hidden, but people didn't know to go out and say, and Skylar's one of them, look what I can accomplish with mental health issues. So, right? And I
cool, yeah.
it is super cool.
Yeah,
and
very.
like the ones we've spoken about that we both know, and that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're doing like insane amounts of
It's crazy.
mileage,
Yeah,
we'll say,
yeah.
for themselves, but just to prove it can be done. And so, and you got the social media platform where without it, no one would know. Like, think about Terry Fox for a minute. Like, think of what he accomplished in a time with no social media.
Instagram?
Right?
No, maybe, no Facebook.
No Facebook. So you
nothing.
had somebody with maybe like an old camera that took the odd picture and maybe some old video footage.
Oh, crazy.
And now you've got Skylar who
That's huge.
reached people all over the world with Instagram and Facebook and these posts.
Just the story, yeah.
Yeah, and I think there might have been a lot more people that did things that we don't know about because we didn't have a social media platform to watch.
No, true.
So we know of Terry Fox because Terry Fox was a very well-known Canadian. But there could be thousands of Terry Foxes out there that we don't know about from,
That's so cool to think,
the 70s and 80s and 90s before all this stuff came out. So now we're just aware of it.
Yeah.
So I think that, in part and parcel, is why we're seeing this more often.
So, with that being said, and you touched on it briefly it's a lot of mileage.
It's a lot of mileage.
Right? It's a lot of moving in one direction, and it's a lot of, it's just so consistent, right? I'm trying to wrap my head around the sheer quantity of doing something like that, and I haven't been able to yet. We'll see. But with that, and you have those people going in and doing therapy with you and your team.
Yeah.
What is your approach to the injury prevention aspect of that? Right, because it's not just about building them up
That's
to
right.
be strong.
That's right.
To peak, because they're not peaking. It's every single day,
Correct.
right? You have to also let them build and get stronger.
That's right.
But still prevent further things.
It's
How
a
do you go
very
about that?
it's a very different protocol because normally when you have a team, let's say a football player, you divide your week into days, right? It's like what I was saying when I was first worked with the sports medicine guys and realized that they did that division. So when you're working with a team and they've got a game, let's say my Sudbury Wolves or my Sudbury 5, we'll go local,
Nice.
and they play, let's say they play Friday night, and I've got an injury from the weekend. And they come see me on the Monday, and it's like, okay, so I have Monday to Tuesday to Wednesday to Thursday. That's all I've got because Friday's game day. So what I would treat on Friday is very different. So I would treat the trauma site very early in the week, and then we try to stabilize it because you're only going to get so much healing done in 3 days.
Right.
And so what we do is more of a management program in that sense, right? So we're like, okay, well, you're not going to be 100% in 3 days. We know that.
No.
But we can tape it. We can brace it. We can prep you for it, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And all those things happen. Now you get a Skylar or somebody who's doing 63 or 65 kilometers every single day.
Every day for a long time.
Yeah. So you're not going to get any healing at all. You're hoping that their sleep, their hydration, and their fuel is taken care of, which we do talk about.
Yeah.
Right? And by the time he got to me, like Skylar, for example, he had already run from BC. So, yeah, I kind of had that stuff figured out, right?
Yeah, I kind of understood the...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you've got your environment, you've got the weather, you've got all these other things. Mm-hmm. And the fact that some of these guys are sleeping in hotels, and they're just... So there's so many variables. So first what we do is figure out what the variables are and which ones we can tweak. So when I got Skylar, I got him literally halfway through.
Yep.
And so you don't want to change too much because he's in a pattern. So because there's a pattern and the pattern's working, you don't want to influence it too much.
Right.
But you do want to improve the little things that he may not have known about, may not have thought about, all those little things. So there is an education piece.
Yeah.
But you can't over inundate them, because it could be like going, ooh, I wouldn't have done that for the last 30 days. Too bad. He's been doing it and you can't change it. But the things that you can influence and change and modify without screwing too many things up, you do. So sometimes it's like, okay, we're going to change the time you take your salt water. We're going to change the order of your meals. We're going to give you a different fuel source here. So little tweaks are actually very beneficial, because if we don't have the week to look forward to, but we have, let's say, another 100 days, we can take that information and saying, you're going to start depleting all your stores. So we're going to take you through the next 100 days and we're going to show you how to do that.
Oh, okay, that makes sense, yeah.
So you can't store anything because you're depleting yourself every single day.
Right. Yeah.
So we have to give you food and fuel that you're going to take in and burn. Take in and burn. And so those kinds of, so you're taking, in my group sessions and in my team, I'm looking at 3 days. In something like what Skylar was doing, I'm looking at 100 days. But it's daily. Yeah. So there is no time to repair. So the treatments, in essence, are, okay, I'm going to remove lactic acid and inflammation from the sites. Nice. So when we saw Skylar, we did full body. He sat in a cold tub first. We removed all the inflammation, brought his temperature down. Then we looked at the sites so you do a lot of global things. Yeah. Flushing of the body, that kind of thing, right? So, yeah. So it's just bigger projects. But you can't influence little sites because you're going to make them sore. Yeah, very different treatment strategies for something that's, they train and they taper themselves, and their coaches know what day they're going to bag skate and what day they're going to, they're going to recover a day, and they're going to go in the gym, and then they got a yoga day and they got a stretching day. Those are very, very different than I'm going to run a marathon and a half every single day for X number of days.
Yeah, there's a different challenge there. Yes. For sure. Now, does that help when you see clients like that, and it's so different from whether it be elite level hockey players or football players, basketball players, to guys like Skylar, for example, or people like Skylar, for example, doing those crazy feats, like you said, marathon and a half every single day for about half a year? Yeah. Ridiculous. So how helpful is that, having like a team to do that? Like just, boom, this is where we go. This is like the HQ of getting recovery and prevent my injuries. This is where I go. We go see Kim, and her and the team, they take care of it. Like, how nice is that?
It's critical, because I graduated from school 21 years ago. So, you know what I mean? Yeah. So things have changed, and so I've got, of course, I'm the oldest one in the facility. So then I've got, a fascial stretching therapist like Mike, who has a really cool vibe, and his knowledge base is different than mine. Right? And then you've got physio, who has a little bit more evidence-based material. And so having a collection of people with different experiences and different educations is actually pretty cool, because if I can't figure it out, or it's like, okay, we've got this guy or this girl, and she's doing A, B, and C. We're going to see them for a day and a half, and then they're gone again, or whatever it might be. You can take all those heads, and we do like rounds, like physicians do, and you get together and say, okay, how are we going to tackle these issues with the time we have, knowing that they're coming out of here and they're going to do this, whatever is coming up, and then we can sit down and figure out the plan. So it's not on one person's shoulders where you're right or wrong.
Probably nice.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Two, it's not only on one person's experiences, because before the I'd say before, probably even like maybe 2015 and later, the Spartan races existed probably, but they weren't really well known. It's only in the last, let's say, 5 to 7 years where you've got these regular people doing extreme things.
Yeah.
Right? So when you have a high-level athlete doing something extreme, well, their body's prepared for that.
Yeah.
When you take an everyday person who sits at a desk and then all of a sudden they're going to do 21 kilometers and 60 obstacles, that's not a normal transition.
No, it's kind of outrageous.
Yeah. So that's where the team approach, it's always better. Now, thankfully, the team approach is only as good as your pieces and only as good as your relationships. But I definitely believe the team approach is better than one.
Amazing. So I get a sense that you're very, very big on community, whether that be in your...
I am.
Right?
I love my community.
Amazing. Whether that be in like your own group at Active Therapy Plus, or whether that's in the community of Sudbury.
Right.
So with that transitioning a bit, what are some activities or community involvement groups that you do? Like, tell me about that.
Yeah, I love my community. Nice. They groom me and they feed me, right? So,
yeah, that's fair.
So I am a Rotarian, very proud one. I'm part of the Sunrisers. And the nice thing about Rotary is it's a group of, it's a good network. They're like-minded. They're usually business owners or healthcare providers. Yeah. And we do a lot of great things in the community. There's Rotary Park. All the way down, if you follow Rotary, they're also in the process of eradicating polio. So they do things worldwide. So almost every community has a Rotary program. So we do Vive le Vin, we do the lobster dinner at and that's the other group. But there's 2 groups of Rotary in town. So I do that, and that's at a slightly bigger level. And then I try to kind of go with what's happening in the community. So anytime one of our local athletes do something like Cacciati or Matt, I jump in on those things to push that. When COVID hit, I, like most people, was like, okay, now what do I do for a few weeks? So I started something called the RVs for healthcare workers with a friend of mine. And what we did was, because the campgrounds were closed and a lot of our frontline workers were scared to go home because we didn't know anything about COVID. So I reached out in my community, and every time I do, they come at me with arms wide open. And we had Jim's Portable Toilets, we had Dr. Clean, we had Jerry Lougheed, we had everybody you can imagine, Nickel City, Nickel Belt Camping, everybody. And what they did was, even Vince Palladino gave me brand new RVs to park in healthcare workers' driveways. Even our city of Sudbury gave us an extension on the bylaw of being able to park an RV.
Come on.
No, everybody just said, yep, you know what, let's do this. So what they did was they allowed us to keep our healthcare workers safe from their families. They could do one of these out the window. But before we knew how contagious and how dangerous COVID was, community stepped up.
That's amazing.
Sudbury, could I do this in a bigger community? Can I do this in a different community? I don't know.
Maybe.
But I'll tell you, the Sudbury community, for backing one of its own, is insane. It's an amazing community. Every time I've reached out for example, in the past, Derek McKenzie would run an NHL golf tournament, and that golf tournament would raise money for the NOFCC, which is the Families with Children with Cancer. And a couple years ago, I was chatting with him, and because he's now a coach in the NHL, he doesn't get his summers off. And this is a big undertaking. This is a big golf tournament. And so I said, okay, I'll take it. And he's like, one problem. I'm like, what? He's like, you don't play in the NHL.
I'll figure it out.
That's okay. That's just a small problem.
That's me problem.
Okay, sure, Kim. And sure enough, Tyler Bertuzzi was in the clinic, and I said, Ty, you want to do this for me? And he's like, sure. I don't have to talk, do I? I'm like, no, don't have to talk. I just need someone to be in the NHL.
I don't have to talk.
And that's just funny. Like that, within months, Tyler became this community icon, and he helped me with everything we needed. Now, unfortunately, COVID hit in 2020, so we couldn't do his first golf tournament. So what we did instead was we sold face masks of Tyler Battizi's Smile. And, you know, I said, I'm going to sell $10,000 worth of masks. And everybody thought it was nuts. And so I didn't sell them cheap. They were $70 a mask. So they were expensive. And again, I went to Smith's Markets. I went to Cocoon Hardware, Boulanger Ford.
Yeah.
I went to see Laking Toyota. And
everybody.
Yeah. And I sold out of masks, and we made $10,000 for the NOFCC.
That's amazing.
Right? So
amazing.
It's, you know, and again, it's an ugly smile. I love you, Tyler, but it's an ugly smile. And you know,
missing half there, right?
yeah. And so
funny.
it's, you know, it's anytime somebody here has needed something, whatever it was, this community is a pretty special place. There's no doubt.
So we've been in COVID for what, about 2 years now?
Pretty close, yeah.
Close? Oh yeah.
Just shy of, but yeah.
Yeah. So what? I was talking to a paramedic who I had on last episode, Matt. Love the guy. Him and I kind of after the episode started talking about community and stuff like that, and he made an interesting point. I'm curious about your perspective on it. But how has the community changed from the beginning of COVID and the whole pandemic to where we are now? That could be at a global scale, a provincial, federal, whatever it is. But we'll focus at just the municipal level. But how has it changed in your eyes?
Going back to that RV initiative, and everybody was, you know, pooling together and pooling resources, and there were challenges out on Facebook, and there were GoFundMe pages, and there was so much community where, you know, people were posting on Facebook to just, you know, buy your spa gift certificates, go out and order food, and there was this huge connection. And unfortunately, I think the vaccine passport has broken us a little bit.
Created a divide.
Yeah, there's a divide, and now I do see that on Facebook. I see people who post things about rights and the jab and all this other stuff, and it's unfortunate. And I don't disagree, and I don't agree. I'm in the healthcare field, and I had to do what was right for me and my family. But I don't think we're as connected, and I don't think we're as strong as a community as we were in March, April, May of 2020.
Right.
Unfortunately, I think we'll get back there again.
I hope so.
I think once they start alleviating and you know, taking down some of these restrictions. But I think it's going to. I think for some, it's going to last a little longer than that. I think within family circles, within business circles, within medical circles where, you know, maybe you were denied not care, but they denied entry into a restaurant, or being able to see your son play hockey. I think that's going to leave a mark. I think it's going to take us a little bit of time to heal as a community, and that's every community. That's just not Sudbury.
That's not just Sudbury, right?
But sure. I think we're going to feel that for a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm grateful that I'm in healthcare, so I didn't have to, you know, pull that punch. I know obviously a lot of businesses had to, and that was the only way they could stay open.
Right.
But, you know, it's still tough.
Yeah, and I think you said it though, and I find a lot of people are doing just that, or expressing some form of gratitude throughout the whole thing, where it's, look, I know we're all going through it, whether it be in different ways or not, right? Whether it be you're out for 6 months or not, right? But I think the ability to be grateful or find things to be grateful for in a time like this, we'll call it, is severely overlooked. And we're kind of getting away from that. Like at the beginning, I was like, hey, you know, I'm doing workouts with friends on Instagram. Like just
even the hearts in the windows, right? and the chalk drawings along the sidewalks, and
the drive-by birthdays.
They were not what you wanted. No. But they showed such a connection and a unity, and
made the most of a bad situation.
We have lost that a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I think, now we just kind of, whatever, we're going to all go, or we're just not going to bother. So
we've got that interaction again, that one-on-one person contact.
Which is nice.
And everybody needs and thrives on. Yeah. But some of the creativity and the other pieces would have been nice to see a little longer.
Yeah, I think so. And it was cool, but I can I cannot for the life of me go back to doing Zoom podcast, Kim.
No,
I can't do
me
it.
neither.
I can't do it, right? Any
Yeah.
like interactions with
Yeah.
other clients
Yeah,
or
yeah.
other people, it's like, hey, so
I hear you.
it's good and it's not, but the anxiety going on in my head every single time I hit record or I open up a Zoom chat with a guest and they're from like they're an actor and they're in Halifax and I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, here we go. You know, we figured out the time difference, everything, and now the connection's shit. I'm like, but then they're like, well, it's your Wi-Fi, and I'm like, but mine, like my mom teaches on the thing, like
Yeah.
it's fine for her, it should be fine for this, you know.
Yeah.
So then you're
Yeah.
arguing,
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah.
And so it's for the life of me, I'll fly somewhere to do a podcast
Yeah.
before I
Yeah, no, I hear you.
do the
I'm
one
grateful
Zoom
for that
thing.
as well.
Yeah, it was nice, but then I got over it quickly, and
Yeah.
now we're here.
Yeah.
But switching a bit of gears, do you practice Chinese medicine at all, or have you studied it?
Yeah,
in the past?
I do. I am part of the College of Traditional Chinese Medicine Practitioners and Acupuncturists of Ontario.
Nice.
CTCMPAO. It's a really,
I'm very impressed.
It's a big mouthful. So I did my acupuncture. I completed it in 2000, and in 2013 they regulated acupuncture, which was the thing to do because we are breaking the surface of the skin.
Yep.
And then what they did was they allowed us to write a series of exams. And if you passed them, then they would grandfather you in to this Chinese medicine piece. But when I took my acupuncture, I just took acupuncture.
Yeah.
I didn't take traditional Chinese medicine.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
But the college is
Interesting.
all of it. So it's the herbs, it's the diagnosing of the pulses and the tongue, and
Whoa.
so it's a very it's a whole practice.
Yeah.
Right? And it's very, very different from Western, obviously. So
Yeah.
it took a little bit of studying and
Jeez.
et cetera, but yeah, so I was able to keep my acupuncture license, and it's a big part of what I do, actually. Not the traditional Chinese methods, the acupuncture.
What's an example of a traditional Chinese method of healing?
So traditionally they work in meridians.
Okay.
Right? So their belief system runs that every ailment is either an excess or deficiency. There's a problem within that meridian. So we've got lung, kidney, heart, right?
Yeah.
So, and if you've ever seen one of those anatomical drawings with the meridians, you'll see the little dots and the lines that kind of run up.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah,
So
I know what you're talking about.
They all connect. So when you look up, say someone comes to you and they're having trouble with fertility. Well,
Okay.
there is a protocol, or there's series of protocols, and there's also laws.
Yeah.
So if one way doesn't work, you can work off of a different law. So it's very, very interesting stuff.
Whoa.
And then they give you the points, and sometimes you're stimulating,
Yeah.
sometimes you're dampening, and so you're working on what might be blocking.
Oh, that's cool.
Right? So really neat stuff. So fertility is a big one.
Yeah.
And they work in like dampness and colds and so what their lungs are doing, what their pulses are doing. And so it's very different from,
Yeah.
we say it's different, but when I went to write the exam,
Yeah.
so, in terms of heat, right? They say, okay, well, there's a lot of heat in you. Well, to us, that's inflammation. So it's not that different. It's just the language is different, right? And then when you look at, dampness, well, dampness could be something from an infection to arthritis to, right? So think about being in a damp corner for a little bit. How would you feel? Right?
Yeah.
So we think of them very differently.
A chill feeling.
Yeah,
Weird.
but you can actually if you understand what they're describing from thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, all our medicine typically matches.
Whoa, it's just some form of it's like westernized.
It's just westernized. Yep.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
So it just gives me another trick in my toolbox, right?
Yeah, you don't say. That's
Yeah.
something that, because I knew I wanted to ask you about it, but I had no idea. So I was like,
Yeah.
oh, this-
Yeah.
interesting. Wow. So, what kind of mentorship programs do you do, or are you part of?
So I take on students. I have any given time anywhere from 5 to 10 students, primarily university. A lot of Laurentian. We take on at the clinic. We take physiotherapy students. We take on medical students, and then I'll take on a couple high school students. just, so they can do a co-op. We mentor through, we mentor the student trainers at Laurentian University. We're looking at perhaps starting a mentorship kind of with our Sudbury Wolves. And maybe either via our community or them through the NHL. So I do quite a few mentorship type programs. I take on a lot of students. Anybody that wants to come on in.
Oh, that's cool. I feel it's such an important thing for somebody in a high school student role to do, or even a post-secondary.
Yeah.
Like having that co-op experience. I didn't have it until the second last semester of my my schooling, and I did it after kind of halfway through it. I was like, I don't really know if I want to do this type of, like, be in this type of environment all the time.
Yeah.
Everybody stops moving at 4:30. It was really weird, Kim. I was sitting in this like City of Ottawa building. It was like the 13th floor of this 50-story building. Okay, I'm sitting down. It's Friday. Okay, I'm like, all right, it's Friday. Let's go. This is awesome, right? This is what the best day of the week, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there and I look and I have a timer that goes off at 5, right?
Yeah.
So my timer went off at 5, and as soon as it went, all I heard was just everybody in the office, deep breath out, and everybody stood up. It was the most ridiculous, like, cattle herding
and then
thing of all time. Oh yeah,
right?
and then just everybody fell in line. Hey, have a good weekend. Have a good weekend. And first thing happens on Monday. Everybody sits down. Just coffee. There's a lineup at the Keurig. People just storm in, sit down, and go. And then it's noon hits.
Robotic, eh?
Yeah. So that kind of made me go, I'm gonna figure out something different. So I'm grateful for where I am now, but that learning experience is huge, and I think it's cool that you're giving people a chance to do that and understand kind of what's to expect in the industry. So.
And I like to teach, so, and it's also a good environment for your patients because they're listening to you. So they take a little bit more about what's going on in them because you explain it differently for the student. You explain it to them, but you might give a little bit more detail in the explanation to the kin student or the med student or the physio student. And so you're talking about them longer. They take in more information. Right? And you're talking about the modalities, saying, okay, this is what ultrasound does. This is what we're going to do it for. And they're taking that in, because I wouldn't have necessarily told them that.
Right, but it almost gives them a confidence.
Absolutely.
In that, they know this shit.
And people are, generally speaking, people are really good in educational surroundings. Yeah. I know everyone has a little bit of a issue with the doctor coming in being the student, but your doctor started that way too. And a learning environment is just critical.
Right.
You got to go through it. So, so I love to talk, obviously, and I love to teach. So, having a learning facility is one of the things I think that makes our environment as positive as it is, because we're always talking. The students are always asking questions. So then the patient is learning.
I think that's something that's so fascinating. I think the ability to have that growth mindset and being around, even if you're maybe not so much that's your style, your personality, but being around that, right? Like who you're around is so huge. And who impacts you and who has influence in your decisions and stuff is very, very crucial. Especially maybe not so much as we grow older, but very much in the beginning stages of our lives, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, we all want to make decisions, we all want to choose the right path, but nobody really knows what they're doing. Oh, no,
they don't.
We're just all really good at making it seem like we know what we're doing.
Yep.
So, it's like everybody figured this out by failing a couple million times anyway.
Yeah.
So, you make mistakes or whatever, it happens, but do you have that you're able to share with us a kind of learning opportunity or like a big moment, that experience you had that taught you a lot? It could be at the beginning stages of practice or recently, anything?
I had a lot of... So shortly after I opened the clinic, I had an opportunity to go back to Sheridan and speak. Cool. And one of the very first questions asked to me, and I'll never forget him, he said, "Weren't you nervous about opening your facility? Like opening a clinic?" Because I never worked for anybody. I only ever really worked in the school clinic. And then you were with sports teams because I'm a sports therapist.
Right.
So most of our like internships were with teams, not in clinic settings.
No.
I wanted to be a clinician and I wanted to work on teams, but I didn't want my primary role to be on the field.
Right.
Right? And I remember standing up in front of this class going, oh shit, I probably should have been. But then it was like this epiphany going, huh. No, actually, I wasn't nervous. No, I wasn't scared. Oh shit, I should have been, you know? And it was kind of like this wave came over me and I went, ew. And, you know, everybody in the clinic would, you know, I come in on Monday with a certain look on my face and they all look at me and go, what'd you get us into this weekend? Right? Because I come in with, we're opening another facility or I'm writing a book or, you know, we're doing this for this team or da-da-da. And so they're all, Monday morning, they're waiting for, okay, what are we doing now?
All right.
So I don't know if there was a moment or anything that I went through that I can't think of one except that every time I'm always so grateful for the relationships and what it's allowed me to do. And every time I succeed at something like writing the book or, you know, getting the valet contract or opening another location or, you know, you sit back and you reflect and go, okay, what did I do right to allow these other people or these experiences and opportunities to fall into my lap? And I learned that way. But it's a little reverse than what most people would expect. There's not usually something that I learned from.
Right.
It's usually, oh shit, I did that. Oh, maybe I should, you know? And then it's kind of, I kind of flip it where I'm grateful it happened, but I'm so driven that I don't really need them. I don't know if that sounds...
No, it makes a lot of sense.
Sense.
You don't need a big, like, bad thing to happen for you to learn from, to pick yourself up and move forward or keep going. No. Yeah, I think that pays a lot of, like you said, that could probably be attributed to, excuse me, the people that you're around at those times and just your ability to take from experiences that's happened, right? Not so much these ridiculously bad ones, because everybody learns differently and everybody grows differently, right? Whether you had a big fail or not, it's not really a big deal. So
and you know, there's, you know, like it's not like I've gone after everything and gotten everything, but yeah, you learn from those issues, and sometimes it was, you know, a practitioner chose to leave. Well, that's a loss because they're my friends and they're my coworkers and I consider them family. But I've always told everybody that comes to work with me, not for me, but with me, that if an opportunity is better elsewhere, you need to take it. I'm not going to sign you to a contract because everybody needs to walk into work and have it feel like I get to every day. And if that's not reciprocated for you, and working here or going on this team or moving is that environment for you, then you need to take it. Right? So you learn from those, but they're not necessarily mistakes or anything you did wrong. It's just somebody needs to grow somewhere else or something needs to happen, you know, for you to grow. But there really was never, I can't think of, and I could be wrong, but I can't think of a situation or something that's happened that either derailed me or gave me the direction. I'm such a linear thought process, right? That I just keep trucking.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you touched on it briefly.
Okay.
And if you're okay with discussing it, at least briefly discuss it. Tell me about this book you're writing.
Okay. So I teach a lot. I teach at the med school. I have students, like I said, you know, any given time there's 5+ students in the facility. So I spend, as I'm treating, I'm spending my day teaching. And one of my new athletic therapists, Isabel, and in the past I've been told, you need to come and lecture at this school and you need to come teach my class, or I wish I had you as a teacher because this would have made so much more sense. Or I learned more like this than I did there. And, you know, the thing is, like, hey, I can't go and lecture. I can't just go and do all these things.
I got to work on my practice too. Then.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for sure.
And I can't just walk in front of your teacher and start, teaching the class. So Isabel says to me, well, why don't you just write a book? And I went,
light bulb.
Oh, you're right. I'm going to do it. And I literally started that day.
Amazing.
So I opened like a do-a-tang kind of book.
Awesome.
And I started writing down the things that I did differently than others, that I would consider specializing in the sense that doctors and other practitioners refer to me for. And voila, I had 15 chapters.
Wow.
And then I started, talking to patients about putting their little case study in kind of thing. And
oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And then I started looking for publishers, and I found Tellwell in BC, which I happen to really enjoy working with.
Nice.
And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, this is... So what I'm doing is creating, and it's not a very large book, but it's a resource. Yeah. So it's a reference book for new practitioners or newer practitioners. And what I find in schooling is there's just so much out there, and the body is so gray. And there's so many variables that when they teach you, they have to teach you a very black and white. Sprains, strains, discs,
so much
fractures.
More than that. Yeah.
And you put age, and you put repetitive things, and you put postures in there, and you put ethnic backgrounds, and you all of a sudden, it's not black and white.
No.
And the problem is that they teach you something called differential diagnosis. So when you go to do your tests, and when you're in school, they'll say, well, I think it's lateral epicondylitis. And then they'll say, okay, and what's your differential diagnosis? And what that means is, what else could it be?
Yeah.
Problem is it's still very a black and a white answer.
Could be anything, because I'm sure you could justify it being... Yeah.
So you're going to say, it's a strain of the brachioradialis. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's possible. You're right. And that's how you leave school. So it's like, okay, so I've got what I think it is, what tests positive clinically, and then I have an idea of what it might be. But what the differential diagnosis means is that, okay, but it's probably not something that similar.
No.
But what we don't do is we don't dive back into things that we were taught very briefly.
Yeah.
And in my 21 years of experience in the chronic pain and sporting world, I found that the things that I never thought about actually ended up being the majority of my diagnosis.
Oh, wow.
So the real obscure, out there, didn't even know that could happen in that site issues. And that's why a lot of my referrals, they say, if Kim can't figure it out, nobody can. And that's not because I've reinvented the wheel.
No.
All I've done is gone back and went, what were those obscure things that they never really spent time teaching us? Because those are what I'm seeing more of.
Oh, wow.
So that's what I'm writing the book at. It's almost like a reminder or a refresher. Mm-hmm. Don't forget these things, right? Don't forget about these ones that these tissues exist. One, that these tissues can be injured or inflamed. And one, that you need to investigate these possibilities. And if you do, you'll be more successful.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. I love that.
Yeah, so I'm enjoying it. It's takes up some time, but it's also making me stronger again, because every time you learn something or you relearn something, at the end of the day, you're still better at what you do. If you don't open a book for 20 years, things have changed, and you are going to forget other things. And then we end up back to patterns. We end up in these loops where everything's the disc, everything in the shoulder is rotator cuff, everything da-da-da-da, and you kind of forget that there is hundreds of other possibilities. So doing something like writing a book 21 years later allows me to go back and remember some of those grassroots.
And now also I find doing that would also, you can see what might have changed or what has stood the test of time.
Yep.
Right.
Well, and what I see clinically over and over and over again, which they don't prepare you for.
Really?
Right?
Something you see every day.
Absolutely. There's things where there isn't even really a clinical test for. You can only feel it with your hands. So it's like, I've got these nodules in the back, and you keep finding these nodules. And someone will say, well, it's a lipoma. Somebody else says it's a fascial bundle. And somebody else says, irregular tissue. And you're like, well, I can't cut the guy open to find out what it actually is. So, you know, but
Yeah.
I'm seeing 90% of my back patients with this thing. So then you figure out, okay, so I found a pattern. I treat it. That pattern works. So then you got to go back and go, what the hell are these things? Right? And you start going
Yeah.
through and you find out, well, this is what they're called. This is what they do. Oh, that's bad. You know, and then all of a sudden you've got a chapter.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Ah, that sounds so fun though. It sounds like you're really enjoying the
Oh, I
process too.
am. Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. When that's kind of finished and it's done and you've done your and you go on your book tour or whatever, I'll have to have you on the show to go way more into it. And we'll
I
go
would
through
love
and
it. Yeah.
do a read
Yeah.
or something. Yeah, because I definitely love buy a copy. That's that's very
yeah,
intriguing.
and then it'll go out to, it'll be on Amazon, it'll be on all the,
Nice.
so you'll be able to get an e-version, right? And so then it'll be hard copy as well. So
Nice.
it'll be out there.
There's something when it comes to, I found lately, reading hard copies.
Yeah,
I know people, like, as a form of learning that we talked about
Yeah.
briefly, right? The access to information is huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many different ways. Like, there's so many different podcasts about anything and everything, right?
Yeah.
From world history to business, and it's awesome, right? How accessible everything is. But I almost
Yeah.
feel like there's almost too much. Like, it's very, very, very crowded.
very hard to navigate.
Very
too.
tricky,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so I almost find like I go towards people that I'm like, okay, I like what you're doing in this industry, and
Yeah.
I have one or two that I kind of stick with in each industry, whether it be
Yeah.
martial arts, business, like woodworking and woodcrafting stuff,
sure.
right? Whatever
Yeah.
hobbies we all have,
Yeah.
we kind of
Yeah.
find one or two, focus on
Yeah.
those. But with that, do you have kind of a like, what's your favorite experience working like at your, like, as in your job, let's say? Because I think the whole word of job is convoluted.
I think my best experiences will be giving people hope, giving them answers, giving them a direction, and so I think just being able to help people, because you know, when you're in chronic pain, and I mean, my athletes are obviously family to me, and I love them dearly, but they're going to be okay, right? So if one of my NHL players or one of my OHL players or one of my basketball players roll an ankle, they're going to be okay. So is it a cool experience to work with them? 100%.
Probably, yeah.
But the biggest satisfaction is taking somebody who's had chronic pain for 2 or 3 decades, been to everybody, done everything, doesn't have a clue what's going on.
No hope in it.
No hope. And then I see them, I know what it is, I can fix it, or at least I can influence it.
Mm-hmm.
And, and then they give me a hug, or I get this message saying, thank you for changing my life, or thank you for giving me my life back.
That's amazing.
Those are the things that I cherish the most. Like, I've got a really, really cool job.
Yeah.
And at face value, obviously the stuff with the pros and the actors and doing those things, those look like the coolest parts. But in essence, the coolest parts is working on the average, everyday human that has nowhere to turn and hasn't had any help, or the help hasn't helped, and being able to influence their recovery.
Wow. I love that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's a really cool way of wow. That's a really good way of looking at it. Right. So as we kind of wrap up, do you have any, we went through a lot of different things. Do you have any thing that you would like to pass on, or any final message or experience or lesson you'd like to share with everybody, just so that
I do. Going back to the intro where I talked, about everybody in high school and having this direction, I can tell you that probably 98% of those people never went into the direction they went into. So so taking that and making it an insecurity or an uncertainty for yourself, because, oh my God, I don't know what I want to do, isn't the wrong direction.
No.
Right? And there's so many jobs and so many professions and so many careers out there that you don't even, not knowing in the moment doesn't mean anything.
Right. It's okay.
And when I took my first class in osteopathy with this doctor, world-renowned Dr. Guy Voyer, he had everybody put their hands on each other, and he explained this figure 8 type movement that existed in the body. And I'm good with my hands. So I'm sitting there and I've got my hands on this person and I'm trying to feel. And he's like, you're going to feel the body's respiration. You're going to feel the body's blood flow and heart rate. This is a different movement. You have to feel this movement. Okay, here I go. And I'm doing one of these going,
Does
anybody feel this shit? I don't feel a thing. And of course, person's like, oh, I feel this. And someone else is like, oh, I feel it too. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, I can't be an osteopath. I can't feel a thing. Like, I can't feel a thing. So, okay, do this again. And I'm waiting and I'm like, I'm going to fail. Like, this guy's not going to take me. And what I learned in that moment, he stood up and said, you, and you, almost like the new Amsterdam show, you, and you're out of the class. It wasn't me he was pointing to. He said, you're too suggestive. I gave you something to feel for that doesn't exist. And you all did what you thought I wanted you to do, which means that you're not actually going to feel what exists in the body because I told you what to look for and you told me you found it and it doesn't exist. And he only kept 5 of us. And because we're all like, oh shit, we're in trouble. Like, we're not going to be able to stay in this course, only because we were truthful and we were humble and we really couldn't feel a damn thing.
It's okay not to know.
It's okay not to know.
Whoa.
And that was something
that's crazy.
I've carried all along.
What?
It's okay not to have an answer.
Yeah.
The worst thing to do is fake it or lie about it or, you know what I mean? Yeah. And you know what? I've done that in my own clinic. I've said, listen, I don't know what this is. I think it's this. But let's get a second opinion. So going back to that lesson, it doesn't matter if you don't know. And most times, you're going to know eventually, right? Yeah. So whether it's your profession, whether it's your soulmate, whether it's, whatever path your life is going to take. Am I going to stay in Sudbury? Am I going to end up somewhere else in the world? You just have to breathe. There will be a sign. There'll be a signal. There'll be something that comes across and you embark in that journey when it comes. But the one thing, do not stress if you do not know. There's a reason you don't know. And in that time, your body, you, yourself, whatever your environment, you're not ready to know the answer.
Whoa. That's amazing. That's really cool. Now, do you have anywhere, where can people reach you or where can people find you? Where can people get treated or prevent their injuries? Yeah,
so the one location that I'm working primarily out of is called Active Therapy. The funny thing is the building doesn't say Active Therapy on it. It says the clinic that needs no name. And the reason behind that is when
it's amazing.
The owner owned 3 buildings in a row, and mine is the middle building. So when the owner got the percentage of signage, you're only allowed so much percentage of your building being covered by a sign.
That makes sense.
So all that percentage was allocated to one of the buildings, not mine. So when I went to get a permit to get a sign in the building, I wasn't approved. So I went back to the sign company and said, I need something to tell people where I am. Can I put a sentence up? And he's like, I guess so, as long as it's not a sign. I'm like, okay. So we literally put the clinic that needs no name, and it had a dual purpose because most people don't know my clinic name anyway. They just say, go see Kim.
Yeah.
So it was a clinic that didn't need a name, but it was also a clinic that didn't get a name because it wasn't allowed a sign. So, years later now, I can definitely put a sign up, but I've chosen to keep it because
I like it. Yeah. Go
it's kind of quirky, right?
Yeah.
So it's 797 Lawrence Street. I am opening a second location in New Sudbury, so that's some exciting stuff we'll chat about another day.
Yeah,
Thank you.
For sure.
So we will have a second location, but for now, if you look up Active Therapy Plus, the phone number is 674-2222, so nice and easy.
Yeah.
We're a multidisciplinary clinic with 3 athletic therapists, 3 physiotherapists, 3 massage therapists. We have a nutritionist, a doctor of naturopathic medicine, 2 fascial stretching therapists. I think that's it. So
nice.
we've got it all basically, and we are really good. If somebody needs something that isn't under our roof, we have a great referral source. We work with concussions. We work with all athletes. Obviously, we do chronic care and chronic pain, and
Right on, Kim. I'm super grateful for your time.
Thank you.
And that we were able to chat. I learned a lot, and I hope everybody else did too. And
thank you.
Yeah, I look forward to chatting with you again in the future.
Sounds
so
good,
man.
Thank you. Happy Sunday, everybody.
Right on.